Explosion rocks Dubai Financial Center. Dubai Financial Center hit by Iranian drone debris as fresh explosions rocked the city. Dubai, one of the Middle East's most famous financial and tourist hubs, was shaken by another security scare on Friday morning after debris from an intercepted Iranian kamikaze drone struck an area near the Dubai International Financial Center. Now it's time to go in detail and uncover the full story in today's AI podcast.
Picture this. You're standing right in the heart of one of the most glittering, luxurious cities on Earth.
Yeah, Dubai.
Exactly. The skyline is just dominated by the Burj Khalifa, right? This absolute marvel of modern engineering shooting up into this perfectly clear desert sky.
It's an iconic image for sure.
But right now, competing with all that pristine glass and steel, there is a massive, thick column of gray and black smoke. And it's just rising up from an industrial zone right next to the business district.
Right.
You are looking at a premier global financial hub. I mean, a place completely synonymous with absolute stability, extreme wealth, international commerce. And it suddenly looks like an active war zone.
It is an incredibly jarring contrast. And, it's exactly the surreal reality that residents and workers in Dubai woke up to recently. Just the imagery alone.
Yeah.
Thick black smoke reflecting off the windows of global investment banks, it's enough to send immediate shockwaves through global markets. It fundamentally disrupts that illusion of absolute safety that these financial centers completely rely on to function.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are so incredibly glad you're here with us.
Definitely.
Today, we're looking at a stack of courses detailing a really complex, rapidly moving web of geopolitical events centered right in the Middle East. Our mission today is to, cut through the noise of your daily headlines and help you understand how a single event, in this case, a drone interception over a major city, is actually a window into a rapidly escalating global crisis.
Right, because we're going to trace how this one single incident connects military bases, global superpowers, and ultimately the very economy you interact with every single day.
Yeah, because in modern geopolitics, nothing ever happens in a vacuum. Never.
A fire in downtown Dubai is inextricably linked to military decisions made thousands of miles away. And the shockwaves of those decisions, they travel along the global supply chain straight to your front door.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core event we're looking at happened at the Dubai International Financial Center, or the DIFC. What our sources tell us is that an Iranian kamikaze drone was heading directly for the city. Air defenses were triggered. The drone was intercepted midair. But, and here's the crazy part, the resulting debris just rained down onto this massive, densely populated financial district.
Yeah.
It sparked fires. It caused absolute panic in the streets. But incredibly and thankfully, there were no injuries reported in this specific incident.
Right, which is a miracle. And the immediate response from the authorities is where we really start to see the friction, the friction between the physical reality on the ground and the official narrative being projected out to the world.
Yeah, the PR spin.
Exactly. Dubai officials quickly took to the social media platform X to issue a statement. They confirmed the blast wasn't a direct hit, but the exact phrasing they used, which is highly deliberate, by the way, was that, quote, debris from a successful interception caused a minor incident on the facade of a building.
And that phrasing, that is exactly what I want to push back on. Minor incident, successful interception.
Yeah, it does feel a bit minimizing.
Right. Yes, the drone didn't hit its primary target in one piece, so from a purely technical military defense standpoint, sure, it was intercepted. But it feels like a massive stretch to call the overall outcome a success.
How so?
To me, it's like a security system successfully stopping a bank robber, right? But the alarm system was so incredibly loud that it shattered all the windows and completely shut down the entire city block.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The disruption is still catastrophic. Is it really a military win if the sheer disruption ends up achieving the attacker's broader goal anyway?
What's fascinating here is the psychological and economic impact, which perfectly illustrates your point. The drone may have been destroyed in the sky, right? But the debris and the explosion created widespread, undeniable panic across the financial district.
Total chaos.
Exactly. We are not just talking about pedestrians being startled by a loud noise. We're talking about major global banking institutions, specifically Citigroup and Standard Chartered, are named directly in our sources, having to temporarily evacuate their staff as a precaution.
Which means completely abandoning the trading floors, right? Leaving the terminals, halting operations.
Yeah, just dropping everything. And you have to understand the sheer scale of what that means. Dubai's financial district isn't just a regional banking center.
Right.
It hosts hundreds of international banks, massive hedge funds, vital global investment firms. It's literally one of the most important economic centers in the entire Middle East.
Yeah.
It serves as this critical bridge between Eastern and Western markets. And prior to this, Iran had actually issued specific threats targeting financial institutions connected to the United States and Israel. So the mere threat, the physical manifestation of that threat literally falling from the sky in the form of burning metal, is enough to essentially paralyze a massive economic engine.
So the disruption is the weapon itself.
Yes.
You don't actually need to level a skyscraper to cause millions or even billions of dollars in economic damage. You just need to make the highly paid people inside the building feel like they aren't safe doing business there.
Precisely. In the context of modern asymmetric warfare, forcing a global financial hub into an emergency evacuation is a highly effective strike, regardless of what the official damage report says on X.
Right.
Capital is notoriously cowardly, right? It flees at the very first sign of instability. So the illusion of a minor incident shatters when you look at the ripple effects. The algorithmic trading sell-offs, the paused investments, the reassessment of regional risk, all of that spreading through the global banking sector.
Which brings us to the obvious question, I guess. Why now?
Right.
Why is this specific financial district suddenly in the crosshairs?
Yeah.
To understand the panic in Dubai, we really have to connect it to the broader timeline detailed in our sources. And the root cause, the absolute catalyst for this entire wave of chaos across the region, is an assassination.
Yes, it is. The regional conflict we are analyzing has intensified dramatically following the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei.
Which is a massive deal.
It's huge. When a nation experiences a decapitation strike of that magnitude, literally removing the supreme head of state and the ultimate military commander in one single moment, it historically creates a massive geopolitical shockwave.
Right, because they have to respond.
Exactly. It triggers immediate, often highly aggressive retaliatory strikes as the targeted nation attempts to reassert its power, project strength to its own citizens, and deter further attacks. And that wave of retaliation is exactly what we are seeing from Iran across the Gulf region right now.
And this is where the political messaging from the international community gets incredibly tense and honestly, sometimes a little contradictory.
Yeah.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, our sources note the political responses, and we are just looking objectively at the official statements here. We are impartially reporting what is in the source material, not taking any political sides whatsoever.
Absolutely. We're just looking at the facts provided.
Right. So following these retaliatory moves by Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump issued strong warnings overnight. The messaging from the U.S. administration is that they will continue to respond aggressively to these attacks. Furthermore, President Trump claimed that joint military operations between the United States and Israel are actively and severely damaging Iran's military capabilities and its economic infrastructure.
Right. That was the official statement.
But I have to admit, I'm genuinely confused by the contradiction in the official narrative here. If these joint U.S. and Israeli operations are supposedly severely damaging Iran's military capabilities and infrastructure, how on earth is Iran still managing to execute these highly complex, coordinated, long-range drone attacks on major, well-defended hubs like Dubai?
That's the million-dollar question.
It feels like the political narrative is painting a picture of a rapidly weakening adversary, right? But the physical reality on the ground is painting a picture of an adversary that can still strike a premier global city basically at will.
That is the critical disconnect between political messaging and physical reality. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the capacity for Iran to launch these strikes has clearly not been eliminated.
Not at all.
And the Dubai DIFC incident was not an isolated event either. Our sources detail a pattern of escalation that severely contradicts the idea of a neutralized threat.
Right, there were other attacks.
Yeah, just the day before the financial center incident, an Iranian aerial strike reportedly caused a massive fire at a high-rise building near Dubai Creek Harbor.
So another civilian residential or commercial area was targeted.
Yes, and earlier in that same week, a completely separate attack targeted Dubai International Airport itself.
Wow.
That explosion actually left 4 people injured, and authorities are still trying to assess the full extent of the operational damage there. What we are witnessing is a deliberate, calculated strategy.
To hit softer targets.
Exactly. Civilian infrastructure, transportation hubs like international airports and financial centers, they are becoming the primary pressure points in this conflict. They are much softer targets than heavily fortified, anti-air-equipped military bases. But hitting them, or even just dropping debris on them, creates maximum global visibility and maximum economic disruption.
The congestion and chaos we're seeing over Dubai doesn't just stay in a neat geographic bubble either. Because these are long-range weapons, the flight paths are bleeding into entirely different geopolitical theaters.
Yeah, the map is expanding.
And this is where the lines between intentional military strikes and tragic compounding accidents begin to really blur.
The fog of war is becoming incredibly dense right now. When you have multiple nations operating advanced military hardware, firing interceptors and jamming radar systems in a highly compressed, incredibly tense geographic area, the margin for error effectively drops to absolute zero.
We have a tragic, concrete example of that in our sources, too. During what the military is calling Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. lost a KC-135 Stratotanker aircraft. This happened over western Iraq. Now, United States Central Command, or CENTCOM, reported that this was a suspected mid-air collision involving another tanker aircraft. One managed to land safely, but the other crashed, and at least 6 crew members are currently missing.
It's awful.
And CENTCOM has been very clear to clarify that they do not believe this was caused by hostile fire from an enemy or even friendly fire. But I have to ask, why are we seeing a crash like this right now? I mean, I know mid-air refueling is dangerous, but the U.S. military does it every single day. Why did this happen now, during this specific operation?
It points to an operational accident driven by environmental saturation. We really have to understand the mechanics of what is happening up in the sky.
Okay.
Mid-air refueling is already one of the most complex maneuvers in aviation. You are trying to connect a fuel hose to a fighter jet while both massive aircraft are flying mere feet apart at hundreds of miles an hour.
Which is insane to begin with.
Right.
Now add the context of Operation Epic Fury.
This means a massive surge in air traffic. You have dozens of fighter jets needing constant refueling to maintain 247 combat air patrols. The pilots are operating in heightened alert states, they're likely flying in radio silence, and potentially dealing with severely degraded communications and radar systems.
Because of the jamming.
Exactly. Active electronic warfare and signal jamming in the region.
Here's where it gets really interesting, or honestly, just deeply alarming. I keep picturing this like a multi-car pileup on a foggy, iced-over highway.
Okay.
You have the intentional collisions, the drone strikes, the missiles being fired on purpose, but all of that intentional chaos creates a secondary, almost invisible layer of extreme danger. The airspace becomes so incredibly saturated with signals, aircraft, and interceptors that military planes are colliding simply because the environment itself has become inherently unsurvivable.
Right.
The fog of war isn't just a poetic metaphor anymore. It's a literal physical reality of crowded, chaotic skies.
That analogy is spot on, and that highway is expanding rapidly into other territories. The alerts aren't just contained to the Gulf anymore. Our sources note that early on a Friday morning, warning sirens were blaring at Incirlik Air Base.
Which is in Turkey.
Right. For context, Incirlik is a massive, highly strategic installation located in Turkey that hosts U.S. and NATO forces.
Wait, Turkey's a NATO member. Under Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, an attack on one member is considered an attack on all of them. If the sirens are going off there, are we suddenly looking at a scenario where all of NATO is dragged into a Gulf conflict? Why were the sirens even triggered?
Because reports indicated that Iran had fired 2 ballistic missiles directly through Turkish airspace.
Wow.
Firing ballistic missiles through the airspace of a NATO member nation is a massive provocation, even if the base wasn't the intended target. It raises immediate, terrifying fears of wider, unintended escalation. Air defense operators at Incirlik have to decide in a split second whether those missiles are just passing through on their way to somewhere else, or if the base itself and the personnel there is the final destination.
So a single miscalculation by a defense system in Turkey could trigger a NATO response.
Exactly. And the tactics are evolving just as fast as the geography. We also have reports in our sources of a swarm attack. A British Special Forces base in Iraq was targeted by a swarm of drones. UK Defense Secretary John Healey actually confirmed the attack. Interestingly, while British personnel were not injured, Healey confirmed that American troops did suffer casualties in this specific swarm event.
But what exactly makes a drone swarm so much more dangerous than just firing a regular missile?
Well, a drone swarm isn't just a large number of drones flying at once, it's the technology behind them. They are designed to overwhelm highly sophisticated air defense systems by exceeding the system's processing capacity.
Okay, how does that work?
In a true swarm, these drones aren't being individually piloted by remote control. They use decentralized mesh networks to communicate with each other in real time.
Oh,
Right. If you fire a traditional air defense missile, the radar locks onto a single target. But a swarm vectors in simultaneously from multiple altitudes and angles. The defense systems simply cannot physically track, target, and fire interceptors fast enough. If a base's defense can handle 15 targets simultaneously and the swarm contains 20 communicating drones, 5 are basically guaranteed to get through the net.
but what I find even more unsettling about these attacks, specifically an attack mentioned in our sources on RAF Akrotiri, which is a major British Royal Air Force base in Cyprus, isn't just the swarm tactic. It's what investigators are finding left over in the dirt. It completely changes who we think is actually involved here.
Exactly. Our sources reveal that investigators are meticulously examining the wreckage of a drone that struck RAF Akrotiri, and what they're specifically looking for are Russian-made components.
So if investigators definitively find Russian microchips or guidance systems inside an Iranian drone that was fired at a British military base in Cyprus, I mean, the entire geopolitical map shifts, doesn't it?
It absolutely shifts. Western officials are already suggesting that Russia may be providing direct technological assistance and component supply to Iran's drone program.
That's huge.
If this is confirmed, we are no longer looking at a contained Middle Eastern regional conflict. It effectively links this theater to broader global proxy wars. It means the evasion technology, the mesh networking, and the targeting systems being tested and refined by Russia in Ukraine might be finding their way directly to the Gulf.
Which drastically elevates the sophistication and lethality of these strikes against Western targets.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now? We've talked about burning skyscrapers in Dubai, the terrifying physics of midair refueling over Iraq, NATO treaties in Turkey, and the remnants of Russian tech in Cyprus.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It can feel like an incredibly intense geopolitical thriller playing out on the evening news, but it might feel very removed from your daily commute or your trip to the grocery store. But we have to anchor this massive web of information directly to your daily life.
And the exact mechanism that connects a drone interceptor over the Middle East directly to your wallet is the global supply chain, specifically the transit of energy.
Right. Our sources indicate that as these attacks, missile alerts, and military incidents rapidly unfold across multiple borders, governments in the region aren't just putting out localized fires. They are preparing massive systemic contingency plans. We're talking about potential mass civilian evacuations and heavily increased naval patrols in one very specific, vital body of water, the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes.
But I have to challenge this a bit. I hear about the Strait of Hormuz being threatened all the time, but the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet is headquartered right there in Bahrain. They actively patrol those waters. Can a regional power actually practically close down the Strait of Hormuz with the full might of the U.S. Navy sitting right on top of it?
This raises an important question about how modern global infrastructure actually works. The threat isn't that a foreign military is going to line up ships and physically block the U.S. Navy from passing.
Okay, then what is it?
The mechanism of closure is entirely financial. The Strait of Hormuz is essentially the jugular vein of the global energy market. A staggering percentage of the world's total oil supply passes through that narrow waterway every single day.
Wow. Okay.
And you don't need to physically sink a commercial oil tanker to stop the flow of oil. You just need maritime insurance bodies like Lloyd's of London to designate that specific waterway as a war risk zone due to the threat of kamikaze drones and ballistic missiles flying overhead.
Oh, because of the insurance.
Exactly. If the risk is deemed too high, the insurance companies either pull their coverage entirely or they raise the premiums to astronomical levels. Legally, a massive commercial oil tanker cannot enter a port or navigate international waters without valid insurance.
So they just can't sail.
Right. So if the insurance is pulled because the airspace is full of drones, the shipping companies simply refuse to sail. The strait is effectively closed by paperwork and risk assessment, not by a physical naval blockade.
That is incredible. So it's a choke point in the truest sense of the word. And our sources note that security analysts are sounding the alarm on exactly this scenario. They are warning that further escalation directly and immediately threatens global energy markets. The global economy operates on a very fragile, carefully calibrated equilibrium.
Really fragile.
When supply is physically delayed by ships refusing to sail, Or when the cost of shipping skyrockets due to war zone insurance premiums, the cost of energy spikes globally. So, a drone that gets successfully intercepted over a financial building in Dubai, or in a missile that just briefly crosses through Turkish airspace, ultimately dictates the price you pay for gas at the pump tomorrow.
It absolutely does.
It dictates the cost of manufacturing the goods you buy, the cost of shipping food to your local supermarket, and the overall stability of the global stock markets that your retirement funds are tied to. It is all deeply, uncomfortably, and mechanically connected.
It highlights the unavoidable reality of globalization. We share a highly interconnected economic nervous system. A pain stimulus in the Gulf region, whether it's an explosion or honestly just the threat of one, is felt almost instantly by algorithms and markets in London, Tokyo, and New York.
And eventually by consumers everywhere.
Exactly.
It really has been quite a journey we've taken today. We started by looking at the physical debris, the literal smoking wreckage falling onto the shiny, supposedly impenetrable facade of Dubai's financial center. From there, we traced the timeline back to its catalyst, the massive geopolitical shockwaves created by the decapitation strike and assassination of Supreme Leader Khamenei.
We then looked out at the rapidly expanding military theater. We explored how the saturated fog of war is causing tragic operational accidents, like the loss of the U.S. Stratotanker crew during mid-air refueling. We saw how long-range weapons are bleeding into NATO airspace in Turkey, and we examined how the discovery of potential Russian components in advanced drone swarms threatens to merge this regional conflict with broader global proxy wars.
And finally, we brought it all back home, arriving at the very real, very tangible threat this poses to the global energy supply. We broke down how maritime insurance and risk assessment in the Strait of Hormuz directly dictate the prices you pay in your daily life. It is a massive amount of information to take in, but understanding these underlying mechanisms is the only way to truly grasp what is happening in the world right now.
It is. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we've synthesized from our sources today. We started this deep dive by talking about the illusion of a successful interception in Dubai.
Right.
We saw how a drone that technically failed to hit its target still managed to shut down massive financial sectors, force evacuations, and terrorize a premier city simply through the chaos of its destruction.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, in this new, highly interconnected era of kamikaze drones, decentralized swarm tactics, and global proxy wars, has the very definition of military victory entirely changed? If an adversary can cripple your economic hubs, drain your military resources, and paralyze your civilian population without their weapon ever technically reaching its intended target, are our traditional binary defense systems already obsolete? Are we spending billions preparing for a type of clear-cut, definitive war that simply doesn't exist anymore?
That is a haunting thought, but a truly vital one to consider. The jagged white line on the radar is gone. The definition of success and failure is murky, and the alarm bells are shattering the windows all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, look for the deeper connections and mechanisms behind the news, and we will see you next time.
Okay, one question for you. Is Dubai still safe after Iranian drone debris hit the financial district and explosions rocked the city's skyline? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.